A Surrey police commissioner has found herself at the centre of a blazing trans row after saying recently transitioned officers should not be allowed to conduct female strip searches. Leading crime czar Lisa Townsend, who I'm delighted to say will join me in just a minute, is being slammed by campaigners for criticising current National Police Chiefs Council guidelines that advise forces to recognise the new identity of transgender officers from the moment they transition. It adds once a transgender colleague has transitioned, they will search persons of the same gender as their own lived gender. In some cases, the searching officers can be swapped out if the detainee ejects. But what do you think? Should policing guidelines be changed to prevent trans officers from strip searching women? Email me, Dan at gbnews.uk, tweet me at gbnews. Our Twitter poll running there too, the results shortly. But going head to this now is the woman at the centre of this storm, Surrey Police Commissioner Lisa Townsend, and the trans writer and host of the Gender Nebulous podcast, Freda Wallace. It's great to have both of you here. So, Lisa, do you want to set out your stall first and explain why you think this is important?
Hi, Dan. Yeah, well, it is important because what we're talking about is women who are being searched, intimately searched, at a point when they're really vulnerable. So they've been brought into custody. Any of us potentially could be brought into custody. Remember, these aren't women who have been tried or convicted of any crime at all. They've been brought into custody. They may themselves be a victim of abuse, of trauma, have mental health issues. And what we're doing is we're saying to them, well, the feelings of a male officer who may have very recently, as recently as this morning, decided that they would like to identify as a woman are more important than your sex-based rights. And that, to me, cannot be right. And so we do need to take on a case-by-case basis. I'm not saying there should be a blanket policy here. I think that's really dangerous. But I do think that in the interests of protecting women, and we know that police aren't always as great as they should be. The vast majority of policemen, the vast majority of men, the vast majority of trans women are good people just trying to get on with their jobs. But if we've learned anything in the last few years, it is that we need to question some people, including, sadly, the police, about their motives.
Freda, you disagree. Why?
Well, I don't totally disagree. She did make some points. I mean, in the cases of vulnerable women, people that maybe, need a bit of extra care, police deal with a lot of challenging behaviours. People deal with people at very extreme levels of stress. This is something that police officers have to take into consideration. What I would like to ask her, how many trans police officers are there in the Surrey area?
That's a really good question, actually, and I don't know. I've asked the question.
Of course you don't know, because there are none.
No, that's actually not true. I'm conscious of one because that person emailed me today.
So this one police officer presents you with the need to have an article in the Daily Mail and come onto a national TV station and talk about that. When your job was to look into misogyny in the police force, but what you're doing is looking the wrong way. While you're doing this, you're not looking at misogyny in the police force. So what is your job exactly? Is it to find the one trans officer and make an issue with that, or is it to help women? And if I was a police officer, would you have a problem with me searching a woman? And when you say strip search, that just means taking a coat off. There are very different levels of strip searching.
OK, you've made some good points there, Freda, so let's let Lisa respond.
Yeah, so my job as Police and Crime Commissioner is of course, quite a wide one. My job is to hold the Chief Constable to account on behalf of the people in my particular case, Surrey. But I also do take a very particular interest in the safety of women and girls, and male violence in particular. Against women and girls across Surrey. But it's not just Surrey where I care about women. I care about women right across the country.
Yeah, but
and
your
it's
job is
Surrey.
Your job is based in Surrey, and there were 23,000 sexual assault and sex-based crimes in Surrey this year. And looking at trans women isn't going to change that. And what we find is that when people do look the wrong way, that's when perpetrators go unchecked. This is why Wayne Couzens was allowed to be a police officer for so long, because people are looking the wrong way. And, activists like...
So you think this is a distraction, Freda? Is that what you're saying?
Pardon? Sorry, Dan?
You think this is a distraction from the real issues going on in the police?
I fully understand the need in certain... I work for the ambulance service. When I go to attend a lady, I'm fully aware she may be very vulnerable in that situation, but my transness, she's not... I've never met somebody who's looking at me being trans. They just want help. But I know it's a different situation in the police because you're dealing with people who've perhaps committed some You know, they might have a knife on you. Don't know. We don't know the reason why you're searching someone. So that's a completely different situation. But what I'm saying, the trans part is not the important part. The important part is that civil servant, the person that's working on behalf of the police, is doing the best job they can. It's got the trans bit doesn't matter. It might matter in certain situations.
I would agree, and the problem isn't the trans bit. The problem, I think, is self-ID. And you mentioned, Freda mentions Wayne Couzens, who, of course, is unfortunately a really unfortunate but good example of where we know that not all police officers, unfortunately, are quite the people that we want them to be or we believe they are. Now, my concern with self-ID...
How would self-ID change that? You know,
so potentially... So, Freda, I'm happy to answer your question, Freda. So the potential problem with self-ID is if you have a police officer, and this accounts for lots of other areas, including prisons, if you have a police officer who does have a desire to do something to women that none of us would be happy with, self-ID would allow that person to self-ID into that situation, and then the NPCC guidelines say, well, then that person is allowed to intimately search a woman. So that's where I have an issue. Now, I do take issue with somebody telling me about the issues I can and can't care about. I care about male violence against women. I care about a lot of other issues as well. But this is something that, yeah, I do feel strongly about, because the women of Surrey write to me and tell me that it bothers them, and I act on their behalf.
OK, Freda, I'll give you the final word.
Well, I just find this thing performative, because we know Lisa has worked with the LGB Alliance, who are a known trans hostile group. She does work with them. She's worked with We Are Fair. She spoke to people from We Are Fair Cop. We know that...
I don't think it's fair to describe the LGB Alliance as trans, as anti-trans.
Are you sure, Dan? Do you want to see some of their tweets? Do you want to have a look at who follows them and what the content of their mentions are? Because it's not pretty, Dan. And they call people like, they call me on Twitter a paedophile because of this kind of discourse. And this happens on a daily basis. It's not a joke anymore. And somebody's going to get hurt. And it will be because of these kind of words. An innocent trans person is going to get hurt.
OK, well, it's been a fascinating debate. Thank you so much for having it. That is the host of the Gender Nebulous podcast, Freda Wallace, and the Surrey Police Commissioner, Lisa Townsend. So who